As you probably have seen, Adobe XD is an excellent tool for designing websites and apps. And I always design my websites first in a tool like Adobe XD before I build it into a real website because it's just so easy to make changes quickly. Adobe XD just doesn't limit your creativity compared to when you would start in a page builder, for example, where you have to know all kinds of technical things to just get started. So in this starter's guide, I'm going to show you how you can create this design in Adobe XD. This design has a big header image, it has a video button, it has a transparent menu, it has a overlapping search field, text section, and a simple footer with a newsletter input field included. This guide is designed in a way that it will give you a good foundation for watching any other Adobe XD video from now on. I did this by making sure that you need to use all the essential features in order to create this design. This guide replaces my old starter's guide, which was quite popular, but it wasn't really a useful design. So that's why in this guide I went with a more realistic design. And since we're actually gonna create a real project here, you also have a cool portfolio item if you follow this video. Just change up the images, colors and fonts a little bit, and then you can put it in your portfolio. Now, without any further ado, let's just get started. In this first step, we're gonna set up Adobe XD. If you don't have Adobe XD on your computer yet, you can get a free trial these days, or you can buy it. I will put the link to this page in the video description, and then just make sure to install it and open Adobe XD. The first time you open Adobe XD, you will be welcomed with a screen like this, where you can choose the size of your artboard. There are some default artboard sizes for web here, but what I recommend you do, because this is a little bit easier, is to go into the custom size and then pick the artboard size 1400 pixels in width by 1000 pixels in height. Just put in these numbers and then click on custom size. Okay, so the first thing that you see is your artboard. This white thing is an artboard and that is where your design is going to be. If you click on your artboard, you can see the settings of the artboard over here. So on the right side, you always see the settings of the thing you click on in your artboard. And on the left over here, you can create things. For example, you can create a text or a line or a circle. So let's say that we click on the circle. We click and drag to create a circle. Now you can see that on the right over here, the settings change. So if you go back to the selection tool and you click on the artboard, these are the settings of the artboard. Click on the circle, settings for the circle. You also have some alignment tools. So for example, if you want to align the circle in the middle of the canvas, just click on horizontal alignment and click on vertical alignment to align something. By the way, you can move around in your artboard by holding space and then clicking and dragging. And zooming in can be done by holding Command or Control and then scrolling with your mouse. So if you combine that with the space, you can move around to anywhere in the artboard. You also have the zoom option over here, but using Command, Control and then scrolling is much easier. What's also important to know is that you have to create one artboard for every page you design. So let's say that this is our home page. By the way, we can double click on the text to, for example, make it home. And then we can click on the artboard tool over here. And then on the right, we can see all of the artboards which we saw in the first screen. Our artboard size is a custom one. So let's say that you want 2 pages. Go back to select, zoom out, and then hold Option on Mac or Alt on Windows, click and drag. And there you go. The numbers that you see over here are the pixels between the 2 artboards. So I'm going to put it right here. And then, for example, we can create the About page over here. And I don't know if you saw it, but you also have that for mobile. So let's say that you also want to create a design for the mobile version of your website. You just click on iPhone 13 or 12 Pro. And there you go. So that is really easy to do. So I'm going to delete these 2 by clicking on the title and then pressing the delete key, because we're just going to focus on the home page. I'm also going to delete this cycle and we're going to zoom in again. So we have created an artboard of 1400 by 1000, because on most websites, the main content stays in a box. That box on most websites is 1140, and that is a popular size right now. So Adobe XD has a tool to make sure that your content stays within that box. So if you go to the grid over here, you can select it, and now you will get 12 columns by default. Don't worry about these numbers. The only thing you have to change here is the 79. You have to change that to 75. And this is the perfect size. And now we know that our content should not exceed this blue line and this blue line. Okay, so now we're set up so we can continue with creating the basic structure. So now we're going to start creating the basic structure. If we look at the end result, we can see kind of 4 sections in this website. First, we have this header, then we have a white section with the text, and we have 2 parts of the footer. So let's first start with this custom shape. So we're going to go to our artboard and I'm going to grab the rectangle tool over here and I'm just going to create a shape like this. Just make sure that it's from left to the right and make sure that it's also aligned to the top. But when you're in the rectangle, you cannot move it. So you need to click on the select tool again and then move it. Because if you stay in the rectangle and you try to move it, then you create another rectangle, which is not what you want. And by the way, you can always go a step back by clicking on Command Z or just edit and then undo. All right, so here we have our first basic shape. I'm going to make it a bit longer like this. Maybe 520 in height, but as you can see, there's no color. And that is because by default, the fill color is white and the border is on. So there's 1 pixel of border. So I always almost delete the border and then change the fill color to something. Right now, we want something that is a little bit dark blue, something like this. But since I've already prepared all of the colors for this project, I'm just going to import my color palette and then we're going to work from there. So this is the point where you need to download the files. I will put a link in the description down below, and when you get to the page, just click on download. So when you have downloaded the files, you can easily import it. And when you import an image in Adobe XD, you can just drag it anywhere you want, but don't drag it onto a shape because then it will mask into that shape. So make sure to drag it outside of your artboard. And this is what makes Adobe XD nice, that you can have images outside of your artboard. I almost always use this to have inspiration for the project I'm working on. So this is not part of your actual design, but it is in your Adobe XD file. All right, so now we can click on our background and we want to use this color over here. And there's a code in this screenshot. So the code, you can always fill that in here. But what is even easier is if you click on the color picker over here and then just click over here and it will automatically change to that color. And in our final design, you can see the nice curve, but first let's just create these 2 because these are a little bit easier. I'm gonna go to my document, but as you can see, this document is a lot longer. If you click on the artboard, you can see that it's 1680 in height. And our artboard is only 1000 pixels. So let's just change that also to 1680, and then I'm gonna press. Going to zoom out, and now we want to make a duplicate of this one because we want to create a footer. So we can do that in 2 ways. First, you can always go to edit and then click on duplicate, or what's even easier, hold Option or Alt and then click and drag, and it automatically makes a duplicate of anything you do that with. So now you can go to the bottom over here and let's just create our first shape like this, and then I'm making another duplicate, and I'm also giving that some height. And the bottom one has a darker color, which is this one over here. So I'm going to use the color picker again. Click. And there we go. The background is already white, but let's say that your background is another color, because in a lot of designs you have a soft color for the background. And what I see a lot of people doing wrong is creating then another shape for the background and giving that a color, for example, white or gray. But then you have to create a lot of extra shapes. So what you can also just do is just click on your artboard and then give your artboard a background color if it is different. For this design, it's just white, so I'm going to go back with Command Z or Control Z to white. Okay, so now let's create that cool curved shape as you can see right here. So if you click on the rectangle, you can move it around if you want to, you can make it longer, but if you double click, you can see these points. And with these points, you can manipulate the shape. So if you click and drag, you can see that I can now manipulate this shape. I'm gonna go back with Command Z, but you can also add another point. So where is the middle? That's kind of hard to know. So I'm going to go back to my artboard and I'm going to make sure that the grid is on and the middle of my artboard is between these 2 columns. So I'm going to double click on this again. I'm going to create a new point over here and I'm going to drag it and then it automatically sticks. So you have to zoom in a little bit more to make sure that it's exactly in the middle of your document, something like this. But now it's a point. So to make it curved, you just double click on this point and then it's curved. Super easy to do, and you can even manipulate it even further if you feel really creative. But I'm not going to do that right now. I'm just going to undo it and we're going to have this shape. All right, and the last thing we need is a shape for our image. So I can make another duplicate of this one by holding Alt or Option and then giving it a different height. And the color for this one doesn't matter because we're going to replace it with an image. Okay, so the background layers are done. So now we're going to add some shapes on top of it. Okay, so let's start with the play button. Just click on the circle tool and just click and drag. And by holding Shift, you can create it into a perfect circle. First, release your mouse and then release the shift. That's very important. Otherwise, it just switches back. And now we can align it to the middle of our canvas like this. Really easy to do. And then we also want to create that little triangle over here, or polygon, because with the polygon tool, you can not only create a triangle. By the way, I'm holding Shift to make it a perfect triangle, but you can also increase the tree to, for example, 5 over here to create an actual polygon. Right now, we're going to leave it at 3 and we're going to move it on top of our circle. We're going to zoom in and we're going to rotate it. If you go with your mouse over here and then click and drag, you can rotate it really easily. And then by holding Shift again, it will go 15 degrees each time, which is a lot easier. Again, first release your mouse and then the Shift, or it's also easy to just change the number over here to, for example, 90 degrees. Okay, I'm gonna put it in the middle, hold Shift again to make it smaller, like this. Zoom out, it's a little bit too big, so I'm gonna make it a little bit smaller, and then put it in the middle. But as you can see right here, it doesn't look like it's in the middle, even though Adobe XD says that it is in the middle. And that happens sometimes with shapes like this, because mathematically it is in the middle, but visually for our eyes, it's not. So here it's okay to just move it with the arrow keys, few to the right to visually make it seem in the middle. That's really important. I'm gonna zoom out, that looks okay. And now the next shape that we need to create is this shape. Let's just do that as well. I'm gonna grab the rectangle again. I'm gonna create a shape like this, but how wide should it be? Well, now we need the grid. So if you click on the artboard name again, make sure that you check on the grid, then go to your selection tool again, click on the rectangle and then move it. And here we can use the 12 column grid to make sure that it's aligned in the middle like this. Yes, it already was. And just change the height to whatever you want. I'm using 140 here. We also want to create this shape for now. So that is the yellow shape. So what you can easily do now is just create a duplicate of this one. Right now, I don't want the position to move. So now I'm going to use the duplicate feature. So edit, duplicate, and there is a duplicate. You can't really see it. But if you go to the layer panel over here, I was already in the layer panel, then you can see that this shape is on top of this shape. It's the exact same, as you can see. So now if you grab the side and make it smaller and you select the other one, you can see that these are two different shapes. This one, we want to make that yellow. We have that color over here. So I'm going to use the color picker again. You can also use I, by the way. When you hover over it, you can also see the shortcut I. So I'm going to click I and then click over here. I'm going to turn off my grid again. And now we have this. It doesn't look pretty yet, but this is actually the basic structure that we need for this design. Okay, so now that we have the basic structure, we can actually start adding some content. So let's do that in the next step. So in this step, we're going to add our first images to bring the design to life. So let's just do that. So if you go to the folder that I have provided in the downloads below, you can go to the images folder and you can find two images over here, as you can see. These images, by the way, I got from the internet. I always use unsplash.com and pexels.com, which I use very often because you can get copyright-free images here for free. So, for example, if you search for villa, you can see the actual image that we're using in this video. You can click on it, preview it, download it, and use it in your project. It's just amazing. So we're going to use these images. I'm going to go back to my XD. I'm going to open my folder again and make sure that your Finder or your Explorer on Windows is above your Adobe XD so you can drag the images in. Okay, So we're first gonna start with house 2. I'm gonna click and drag, and if you click, you can see that it selects a layer. And the layer you choose will be used as a mask. So if you release it, you can see that that image is already in there. Super easy to do, much easier than most other tools. And for our header, in our final design, you can see that it is not just the image, because the image that we're using doesn't have the blue glow. So what I actually did is that I created a duplicate of this layer, and then I used some trick to make sure that you see the layer that is beneath it through the layer that is on top. So all you have to do for now is just go over here and then make a duplicate. So now you can see that path 1 has been duplicated. We're going to open our Finder again, and we're going to drag the image on top of the top layer. All right, and now you can see that we can play with the opacity over here. So the opacity is the transparency of the image. If you put it on 0, you cannot see it. If you put it on 50%, you can see half through. But they have a new feature over here, which you may know from Photoshop if you use that, and that is layer modes. So what I did for this website is I used overlay, and then you get this cool effect. It looks really good. And then you can also use the opacity if you want. So for example, put it on a 90%, like this. You can also use your keys on the keyboard, by the way. So if you press 5, it goes to 50%. For now, I'm going to leave this at 90%. And the last image that we want to import is our logo. So I'm going to go back to my Finder. I'm going to go to the folder icons and logo, and here logo.png is over here. It's a white version. So I'm going to drag that outside of my artboard. I'm going to drag it on top. So if it's not on top, maybe it's under. Make sure to open the layers panel. So let's say that it's not on top and you cannot see it. Just click and drag and make sure that it's on top. And we're going to need the grid again to actually align it. So I'm going to turn the grid on. Oh, it's actually aligned. Oh, no, not perfectly. No, not perfectly. Now it is. And just resize it a bit like this. All right, I'm going to turn off the grid again. And that's all I want for now. So this is how you import images. Make sure that it's masked within a shape. And you can also use opacity and the layer modes to see the layer that is beneath it. And you've also probably seen the other icons inside of the folder, and these are SVGs. SVGs work inside of Adobe XD. These are vector files, but they're based on code, so they also work on the web. So here you can see the Adobe XD is really made for the web, because if you export an icon from Adobe XD, you can also use it on the web. It's just perfect. So in our final design, you can see that we have 3 social media icons over here in the footer. The ones in my folder are black, but what's great about SVGs is that you can even change the color. So I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to go back to my file. I'm going to go down over here, open my folder, and I'm going to select all of them by holding Shift and then dragging them into my file. And as you can see, one is really big. Sometimes that happens, especially when you download different icons from the internet, from different places. So we could just click on them and then rescale them, but also again here, make sure to hold the Shift. All right, I'm gonna drag in the first one, but I cannot see it. So you know what, I'm gonna start over here and I'm gonna select all of them. And then over here, the fill, I'm gonna change that to white. Now I'm gonna make sure to put them inside over here. And now I need to add the grid again, because I don't know if I am aligning it correctly. So I'm gonna turn on the grids. All right, as you can see, they're way too big. So I'm gonna resize them again. This is a great practice to get to know all the shortcuts. So holding Shift, zooming in with Alt. With this Facebook icon, I wanna make sure that it's as big as my LinkedIn icon. So I'm gonna make sure that it's the same size. You can put it on top of it to make sure that's the same size, like this. Yes, that looks good. But let's say that we want to resize the 3 of them. We can also select all of them. So click and then holding Shift and then select all of them, and now hold Shift and resize them. So that's easier than resizing them individually. So now they are a little bit smaller. I think it looks a little bit better. Okay, so this looks nice. Oh, and by the way, if you want to get your own vector files, your icons, you can go to flaticon.com. This is a website that I really like, especially the interface icons part. where you can search for icons over here. You can, for example, only select the solid icons if you want to work with that. And you just click on it and you can download the SVGs over here. You will need an account if you want to download a lot of them, but this is just a great place to get started. So yeah, that's another little tip that I have for you. Okay, so let's turn off our grid and see what we have done so far. We've imported some images, some icons, and the design is starting to come to life. And before we're gonna add all of the text and make it final, I wanna show you some effects. So let's just do that in the next step. In this step, I'm gonna show you how you can apply effects to your different elements. Okay, so in our final design, we can see a few interesting things. For example, we can see a blur inside of this button over here. Let's just start with that because that just looks really cool. I'm gonna go to my design and we're gonna make sure that we click on our ellipse or our circle. But right now we still have this border over here, which I don't really like. So I'm gonna just first turn that off. And then we can just select the background blur over here. It's super cool that this is now integrated in Adobe XD. We can increase or decrease the blur over here. I like to use just a little bit of blur so you can see what is happening under it still. And you can also decrease the lightness. For now, I'm just gonna leave it like this. You can change the opacity if you want to make it more towards white, but I just like to keep it at 0 in most cases. And for our little polygon, I'm also gonna uncheck the border. And that's actually all I want to do. Maybe it is a little bit too big. So let's say that we want to resize both of them. We can select both of them by clicking and then holding shift and then also clicking on the circle and then going to a corner, then holding shift to scale them proportionally. But if you do that, it scales down to the left bottom corner. So if you want to make sure that it also scales in the middle, hold option or shift as well. And then you can scale it proportionally and from the middle. So first release your mouse and then alt and shift. So now it's just a little bit smaller. It's nice. I also want to group it because now if I want to select it, I'm only selecting one layer, which I don't want to do. So I'm selecting both of the layers again by holding shift, right click and then group. So if you group an element, now you can just click and drag and even resize it again, which is also nice. Okay, that's the first effect. The next effect is shadows. You're going to use shadows a lot in your website designs, but especially for things like this, it's just really cool. So let's just click on our white layer. And since we have not grouped this, we only have selected the white layer and not the yellow one, which is exactly what we want. I'm going to uncheck the border over here and now we almost can't see it, but I'm gonna apply the drop shadow. And as you can see now, it's a really soft shadow. I'm gonna click outside of it to see. Let's just also uncheck this border. This is what we have right now, but you can easily manipulate it by, for example, adding a 0 over here. And then also the blur, we want to also increase that. So if you use 30 and then 60, you can see that this thing starts floating. It's almost flying, which is of course really nice. And you can do two more things to make it even cooler. The first thing is if you click on the drop shadow, you can increase or decrease the heaviness of the shadow. You don't want to overdo this, just make it very subtle. And the last trend in web design is colored shadows, because shadows are not just always black. So you can also change the color of your shadow. So let's just go to that blue that we already have, and let's just make the shadow dark blue like this and maybe increase a little bit. Do you see how cool that is? That is so much cooler. In our final design, you can also see it. It's not fully black, it's a dark blue, and it just fits perfectly. It's so nice. So I think this is what we want, maybe a little bit more color like this. That is starting to look really, really good. Okay, are there more shadows in our design? I don't think so, so we can move on to the next effect, which is rounded corners. In our design, you can see a lot of rounded corners. You can see them over here. You can see them in our image. So let's just first do that with our image. And it's this option over here. You can just click it and then move your arrow keys up to see the difference. So for example, I'm going to use 10 over here. 10 pixels, rounded corners, super nice. And let's just also do that for this white layer. I'm gonna also add 10 pixels over here, but it only applies it to the left over here. And why is that? Well, that is because this yellow layer is on top of it. So if you move this, you can see that the rounded corner is applied, but this yellow corner is on top of it. So we also want to apply the rounded corners to the yellow one. Let's just do that. But then we have this problem over here because the corners are also rounded over here. And in our design, this is what we want. So how we're going to do that is by using this option over here. And here you can change the individual corners. So if you click, you can see in what corner you are. So here we want to use 0. So now all of the corners are rounded, but this corner is on 0. We want to keep this at 10, 10, and then this also on 0. All right, that looks awesome. Now looking at our final design, I can see that I forgot to explain one thing in the last part. I'm sorry, but as you can see, this image is cropped in a different way because this house here is a lot bigger than this house. So what you can do is on your top layer, so we have 2 layers over here, remember, on our top layer, we can double click it and you can actually change the image inside of the mask without the mask changing. Just replace it to something like this, and now our image is in a different position. Okay, so now you have learned some common effects that are used on the web, and now we can move to the next part, which is actual text content. Okay, in this part, I'm going to show you how you can add text elements. It's not really hard to do, but there are some things that you need to know. All right, so if you want to have the exact design as I have, make sure that you install the fonts that I have provided in the fonts folder. So install them on your computer. You don't have to restart Adobe XD in most cases. It will automatically see that it's installed on your computer. So if you have those fonts installed, we can start creating our first text. So we're gonna grab the text tool over here. I'm gonna click anywhere, it doesn't really matter. And we're gonna type your new house. We are now inside of the text tool, but we want to select it and make it bigger. So we're going to go back to the select tool and we can just click and drag on this little circle over here and make it really big like this. Okay, we first want to make it white. So we're going to select a white color from the fill over here. Now we want to change the actual font. So you can do that over here. The font that we are using is Eurostar. Okay, so let's now see our final design and why does it look so different? Well, that is because I've also used this feature over here, which is called character spacing. And character spacing is the spacing between each character. So for some fonts, that makes it look nicer. So I'm gonna use -60 over here. And now you can see that it looks completely different. It's on one line, so you can just double click and use enter or a break to get it to the next line. But that is not the perfect way to work because then it's harder to change afterwards. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go back to the select tool and not use this one, which for titles then means that it's on full width, but I'm gonna click on fixed size. Then you will get a text box and you can make it into a text box. Also in our final design, you can see that there's a lot less space between the lines. And you can do that by decreasing this number over here, which is the line spacing. So for example, make it 110. All right. Oh, in my design, I have not used capitals everywhere, like this. And now this is left aligned, so we can easily middle align it like this. Put it where we want, make this box a little bit smaller so we can still click our play button. Move things around a little bit. Okay, now let's make this new, the yellow that we have used before. And we can constantly, if we want to, use the fill option over here to just edit it like this. But this is a good moment to show you an amazing feature in Adobe XD, and that is the asset panel on the left over here. You can click to open it. Document assets, it says, and you can add colors, character styles. You can add a lot of things. So, and what this allows you to do is to add colors to the asset panel. So if you click on the yellow over here and you click on color plus, then it adds this color. So whenever you want to change something to this color, You just, for example, want to change this triangle, and you click over here, then it will automatically change to that color. And what's amazing about this tool is that when you change the color from this side over here, then it changes inside of the whole document, which is exactly what you want when you have a whole big document. You don't want to click on 100,000 layers. You just want to be able to do that from one place. So always make sure to add your colors to the asset panel and then add them from there when you have new elements. For now, I'm going to put this back at white. So I'm also going to add white to the color palette, and I'm going to click on my triangle and I'm going to make it white. All right, let's now add this part, which is also not very hard to create. This is a title with the same font, Eurostar, and it is a text field with another font, DM Sans. So since I've already applied the character spacing on this font, I'm going to use this as a basis. So I'm just going to go over here. I'm going to change this text layer to a different color, which we have on the panel over here. And of course, we also want to add that color on our color panel on the left, so we can easily select it. And here we cannot hold shift and make it smaller. We have to use the numbers over here. You just go back to this tool and then just grab it if you think that that's easier. All right, I'm gonna make that a bit smaller. I'm gonna left align it, gonna change the text. And now where do we align it? We're gonna turn on the grid again, as always. And I'm gonna align it just over here. And I'm turning off the grid again. By the way, I'm selecting the artboard by holding Command or Control and then clicking on the background. Not on a layer, that doesn't work. But if you click on the white background, then you select the artboard. So that's a little trick if you don't want to zoom out all the time. All right, so I'm gonna uncheck the grid. So I'm gonna click on the text tool or click on T, and then create a shape. So if you click and drag, you automatically create a text box. And here you can start typing your text. There is dummy text for designers, which is called lorem ipsum. So if you search on Google for lorem ipsum, you can find a lot of websites that provide this. For example, this one, you can just select a text like this, right click, copy, go back to your design tool and just double click and paste it. You can just right click and paste or press Command V or Control V, and then the text box is in here. So we're going to change the font to something else. We're also going to change the size. We don't want the character spacing over here, and we also probably want a different line spacing for our main text, maybe 26. The bold one is also not what we want. We want a regular one, and this is starting to look a little bit nicer. And now the whole text that we copied is in here. So if you want to reduce that, you can click on this text box option over here, and then you are able to decrease it in order to make the text a little bit shorter. So the text is still in here. You can see that by this dot, this red dot, because if you double click it, you can see the text, but you have just decreased its size. Maybe I'm gonna add a break over here to make sure that that is just out of frame. And just like that, we have a text. What is nice for text layers is a color that is a bit softer. So for example, this color, it doesn't need to be too light, but it should be a bit softer than the text. So it creates some nice balance, as you can see, super nice. And of course, I'm also gonna add that color to the asset panel. In our design, we also have this little rectangle over here. You already know how to create it by now. So I'm just gonna zoom in. I'm gonna give this a little bit of room, grab the rectangle, and just make a little shape like this. Just make sure to select the yellow color and unlink the border. I need a little bit more space, as you can see. By the way, if you have trouble by keeping it on the same line, you can also hold shift so it stays on the same line. That's a really easy trick. That looks nice. Okay, so let's zoom out and let's now focus on the next text layers. For example, this one. This is a smaller version of what we see over here. That's really easy to do. I think we can go a little bit faster now. I'm just gonna make a duplicate with Option, and I'm just gonna decrease this size like this. I'm gonna left align it. I'm gonna change the text. Gonna make it into a text box so I can decrease it like this. Gonna add a little bit more line height like this. I'm gonna select one word and make it yellow like this. And that was it. super fast to do. Okay, let's now add another text, which is this bottom one. It is the same style as this text, but it has a different color. So let's just do that right now. I'm gonna duplicate this whole layer like this. I'm just gonna create one word, which is an email address. We don't need this whole text box now. So what you can do is then go back to your normal auto width option. I'm gonna turn on the grid again to align it to the side. I'm gonna turn off the grid again. And now I want a different color because as you can see, it's too dark. And the color what we're gonna use is this lighter color over here, A4, like this. Looks super nice. And we're gonna add that to the color assets panel as well. Okay, let's now focus on this part. I need one font over here with a few different colors and a white one over here in the font DM Sans. So I'm just gonna grab the text layer over here. I'm gonna type something like this. I'm gonna make a text box of it again, like this, make it a bit bigger, change the color, change the width over here to bold, making it a bit bigger and increasing the line height to make it just look nice. That looks all right. Where in New York? Let's just do that as well. Where? Okay, for this part we need a light color, a darker one, and a line. So let's just create that. I'm gonna use the lighter color over here and making it a bit smaller. I am not using bold, but I am using regular. By the way, you can also press Command or Control B in order to make a text layer bold and switch between bold and not bold. So now I'm duplicating it by holding Alt. This one is bold and it's darker, and it says the name of the actual place, New York. I'm adding a search over here in white. Make sure to first select it and then click on the white. Line it in the middle, perfect. And the last thing we need to do is add this line over here. And we can just use the line feature. You can also grab the rectangle, but if you just use a line that is a few pixels in width, you can easily do that like this. Holding Shift, by the way, to keep it on one line. First release your mouse and then the shift. And since it's a line, it has no fill option, but it only has a border option. So you cannot select your asset colors from here, but what you can do is just grab the dropper over here and then go to the color that you want, like that. Doesn't that look nice? And of course you can spend a lot more time on the alignment to make it look even nicer. And now in the last part, we're gonna create text layers to create some buttons and to create the menu. And we're gonna use some new tricks again to achieve that result. In this step, we're gonna create buttons and a menu by using two new features called padding and stacking. Let's look at our final design and let's just start with the menu. So over here, we can see we have 4 menu items which are floating and 1 button. And what's great about this menu is that let's say that you want to change this about to about me, then automatically the home moves, as you can see. So you don't have to reposition everything, which is perfect. So I'm going to show you how you can do that. So we're going to go to our design and we're going to zoom in. So let's create the first menu item. I'm going to grab the text tool again. I'm going to type in home over here. It still has the DM Sans font, which is perfect. For menus, I like to use 15 in pixel size. And I'm using the white color. We want to bring it on top. If it's not on top, right click and bring to front. So then it will become the top layer. And then we're going to hold Alt and we're going to create a second item, which we're going to call about, properties, and contact. Okay. So the first thing you want to do is make sure that it's a group, because right now these are individual layers and you want to move this thing around. So I'm going to select the first one, hold Shift and select all of them, then right click and group. Now it's a group. We can also see that within the layer panel, as you can see, group. Let's just double click and call that menu so it's better organized than this mess that I've created over here. So now what you can do is select this stack option over here on the right. And if you click on that, then Adobe XD sees that it is a horizontal stack. If you put it on vertical, then the items are stacked vertical. So Adobe XD can see what you're doing, you know? Okay, so if you put in a number over here, then it will use that spacing between all of the items. So I'm gonna use let's just try 30 for now. That looks pretty nice. So if you then, for example, change properties to my properties, you can see that it automatically adjusts because it keeps those 30 pixels between all of the items, which is exactly what you want. But now the menu moves to the right, which is not what we want. We want to move it to the left because if we have a button on the right over here, we of course don't want to move towards the button. We want to move from the bottoms. So then you need to select all of these layers and make sure that the text are right aligned. All of the text layers, the individual text layers, not the group, but the individual text layers. And now if you change it, let's say that you change it, you can see that it will move to the left, which is what we want. Okay, so the stacking feature is great to do that. The stacking feature, by the way, is also great to change positions. So of course you can change the position from the menu over here like this and then change them, but you can also just click and drag like this and it will stick in position. That's perfect. Okay, we're gonna move this a bit to the left because we need some space for our button. I'm gonna turn on the grid by selecting the background and then turn on the grid. We need more space for our button. I actually want to use one of these layers as a starting point. So I'm gonna select one of the layers by clicking and then double clicking it. Or if you want to move faster, you can hold Command and then click and you will go through all of the layers to the actual thing you're clicking on. So I'm going to copy that, then click outside of the group and then paste it outside of my artboard. And now it's over here. And then I'm going to move it, sign up like that. All right, so now this is not part of the group menu, but it is over here. Now we want to grab the rectangle again and create a rectangle, open the asset panel, make it yellow, delete the border, and now we're going to increase the rounded corners. You can do that over here by the number like I showed you, but you can also grab these corners and just make it fully rounded like this. Now we want to move it beneath the text layer, so I'm going to open the text layer, make sure that it's beneath it. We want to group this because we want to grab the button. So I'm going to click on the text layer and then also by holding Shift, click on the rectangle. And then first I'm going to align it in the middle because it's not perfectly aligned, as you can see. So I'm first going to click on this option and then also vertically align it. So if you select two layers, it's going to align the text layer inside of the rectangle, which is perfect. And now I can group it. Perfect. And now we're going to use the last option that I want to show you, and that is padding. This is such a great feature for buttons because now it will keep 10 pixels on the top and then the bottom, and it will keep 34, as you can see on the right, on the left and on the right. So now if we change the text inside of this button, so let's say that I'm changing it to sign up now, the button will automatically change in size, which is perfect because otherwise you have to constantly make the button bigger. This is how it was before, but this is just a great feature for buttons. So that is what you want to do. I'm going to go a step back. I'm going to align the menu. I'm going to also make sure that it's 30 pixels. You can see that by the pink numbers, or you can also hold Alt and then you can see how far it is from the button. Okay, perfect. Oh, but the first thing that I see is that the logo is much lower than the menu. So I'm going to select my menu and select my button by holding Shift and then making sure that it's aligned to the height of our logo. Okay, that looks a lot better. Okay, now I also want a button over here. Let's just do that. I'm going to click and drag by holding Alt like this. I'm going to align it to the left of the text. And we're going to change this text to explore more. Oh, but now it's going to the left. I don't want that. So let's go a step back. We're first gonna make sure that it's left aligned. And now if we change the text, it will go to the direction we want. And there's also a button over here, but we already, of course, have that from the top. So we're just going to use that button and just place it in the middle over here, align it. Perfect. All right. And the last part is this input field. We're going to use the stroke feature to do this. So I'm going to make a duplicate of my sign up button like this. I'm going to make it a lot longer. Oh, that doesn't work. Why does it not work? Well, because the padding is still on, so it keeps that space. So I'm just going to unlink this and make sure that this has the length that I want, like this. Now I want to add a border, but I don't want to add a border to the whole button. I want to add a border just to the rectangle, the yellow rectangle inside of it. So I'm just going to add a border like this. The border needs to be white, 100% white, and then the fill needs to be off. And now it creates an input field. Perfect. All right. I'm going to align this to the left and change it to your email. Oh, it's right aligned. I'm going to left align it like this. Perfect. So visually, we are done now. But there is one more thing that is really essential to know about Adobe XD that will save you so much time. So that thing is what I will show you in the next step. Okay, so in this step, we're going to talk about components, because as I showed before with the colors, it happens a lot of times in a design that there are repeating elements. For example, like this button or the text box. Let's first start with the text box, because in a normal design, the normal text layer is used in many different places. In this design, it's only in this place because it's a simple starting design, but the normal text box is used in so many places. So what you want to do is you want to also add that to the asset panel like this. And then when you have multiple text boxes on different pages and you change it from here in the same way as the text color, it will change in different places, which is exactly what you want. But the component feature is even more impressive, because with buttons, we already have 3 buttons on this page which have the same styling. So instead of duplicating it like I did, what you actually want to do is use the component feature. And a component feature is kind of like a template for a specific style. So let's just rename this to button. And now you can see that this green border shows up with this little diamond. And this diamond shows that this is the main component. And all the other ones which I'm going to create will kind of like be the daughters of the mother component. So instead of just creating a new button, you shouldn't actually do this. Just delete it and drag it from the component panel over here. But in the master component or the mother component, the text is right aligned. But here I want the text left aligned. That is fine to do because it will not change the master component. It will just change this version. So let's just change the text over here, explore more, and let's delete this one and drag it from the component section like this. Okay, so now if we are going to change this master component, by the way, if you forgot what your master component is, you can always right click and click edit main component. Oh, they call it main component, master component, mother component. It's all the same thing. But if you change this master component, sorry, whatever. For example, you don't want all the rounded corners. You change the master over here. And then you go to your other buttons and they will also change. So it doesn't matter that you have changed the text over here and put it on left align. But if you change other things in styling, such as colors or rounded corners, then it will change in all the places, which is exactly what you want. So this is just a feature in Adobe XD that I want you to know before you start actually build bigger things in Adobe XD. For now, I'm just gonna put it back, and then it will also change these buttons. It doesn't change this one, of course, because we have not used the component feature. But for input fields, you want to add another component because this is kind of like a different style. It's not even a button. So you want to use different components in your website. For example, this is also something you're going to use in a lot of places. So also just make sure to make that into a component. Just call it social icons. And whenever you need that, just drag it from here and then put it on another page. So let's say that you want to delete Instagram. It will also do that on all the other pages, as you can see right here. So that was another thing that I just wanted to show you real fast because it just makes your life so much easier. Okay, so now you know how to use the component feature, but let's say that you want to share this design or export your design. That's also really important and something I think you should know. So that's what we're going to do in the last step. In this step, I'm going to show you how you can save, export, and share your design. All right, so we are happy with our design. It looks beautiful and we want to share it. But first, of course, we need to save it. You actually need to do this a lot earlier. But right now, if you have an Adobe XD Cloud account, it will save it automatically in the cloud. We'll just call it, something like this. So you don't have that problem like you had before where you forget to save your document and everything is lost because it's already saved within the Adobe Cloud. But I don't use the Adobe Cloud because I use Dropbox. Maybe you use Google Drive or Box or whatever. So if you go to File and then save as a local document, so then you can save it wherever you want on your computer. And this will be saved as an Adobe XD document. So let's just do that. I'm going to call this Home Design version 1. I'm going to save it in my documents. Now I want to open my documents and here it is, an Adobe XD file. Really easy, but you shouldn't share this with your client because maybe your client doesn't have Adobe XD, and even if he has, then he has to install all of the fonts because the fonts are not saved in the file. The fonts are saved on your computer, so you don't want to share this file with your client. I would never do that. So what you want to do is you want to use the sharing features in Adobe XD because they also have thought about some super cool options to do that. The first option that I want to show you is to click on the play button over here, and this will create a kind of real looking version because you can scroll inside of your website like it's a real website. And the way it defines the height of this window is by this blue line right here. You may have seen it already, but you can change it. It's the viewport height. So let's say that you're going to put it at 800 like this, and you click on play, you have this little preview. And what's great about this is that you can just click on record over here. I'm not going to do that right now because I'm recording this and then my video will probably crash. But you can click on record and then it will create an MP4 file, which you can put on YouTube or just send to your clients via Dropbox or WeTransfer or whatever. And that's just great to show what you've actually created. But if you want them to scroll through your website, you even have another option, and that is the share option over here. So if you go to share, you have a few options. If you want to work with clients, I recommend the design review one. If you then click on create the link, it will create a link which you can share and they can open it in their browser. They don't have to have Adobe XD. They can just click on it. They can scroll through the website and then add even comments on it, which is so cool. You can even share it with a developer, which will then show some code on the side. You can test these different things. The presentation is a new feature. I haven't tested that, but I mostly use the design review feature. There's a last way, and that is to export your design to a JPEG. Do I recommend it for sending it to clients? No, but sometimes you just want to have an export as an image file on your computer. So you can do that by making sure to selecting your artboard that you want. You can also select multiple artboards by holding Shift, then go to File, Export, Select it, and then you can export it to PNG, JPEG, PDF, SVG. I do not recommend for whole artboards, but I would do JPEG because these have the most colors. And just call them, I don't know, home export v1 and just export it like this. And then it will create a file. This file will have the exact same size as your Adobe XD. So if you think that this is not sharp enough, because it's not really sharp as you can see, you can go back, export selected, and export size, put it on 2x, and then it will double all of the pixels. So let's just try that. I'm gonna click on the other name and call it v2, export it, and go. And as you can see now, it's 2 times as big. Looks a lot sharper even if you zoom in. You can even create a prototype if you want to with the prototyping tool, where you can connect different pages, different artboards to each other with the link tool, as you can see right here. But I decided that that was too much for this starter's guide. But always explain that Adobe XD is just a design and it's not the real website. Because if you want to build a real website, you have to use other techniques and other software. Some people think that Adobe XD can do that, but Adobe XD is just for design. So if you want to learn how to build a real website from an Adobe XD design like this, then you can sign up for my course about Elementor Pro, where I teach how to do that. And another thing that you might want to learn is how to come up with designs like this yourself. I use a whole design process for this with different steps, so that I'm sure that I always get a great design that I like and my client likes. I'm also working on a course about that, so you can sign up for that course on the page, and I will email you with information about the course. So I hope that you have a feeling of achievement after watching this video, because that just makes me happy. And if you did, then please let me know by leaving a comment down below. I want to improve my content as well. Let me know what you like and disliked about this video. And not only for me, but also for other people to decide whether they want to watch this video or not. And if you want to learn more about designing, building and selling websites to clients, then check out my channel, because I have a lot more content about that. And then I want to thank you for watching, and hopefully I will see you in another video on Living with Pixels.